Why are we here? And I mean, now looking at, the almost 40 people, why are you sitting here? Why am I here? I told you a little bit about why I'm here, but why are we here? Last week we had over 50 people. They showed up, hit this link and showed up. Why are we here? That's one good question. Um, what makes something a spiritual practice? That's another good question. Who needs it? That's another good question. So those three questions maybe we can get to, and I've got a poem that leads right into them. But why are we here? All of us. We can be here now from anywhere, and we really are. But why? And what makes something a spiritual practice? Because actually, showing up for this, we're doing quite a spiritual practice. But what makes something a spiritual practice? And then who needs it? I put on monks in front of your Gregorian chant because you think of, well, monks or people who are vowed religious, well, they have a spiritual practice, but where are we showing up here? You see, we're not monks and nuns. And maybe some of us are. I don't know who's showing up. There might be some, but so those questions. So I've got just a little short poem that I think will actually be the lens to where we can answer these three questions, or at least explore these three questions. And then maybe a fourth bonus question. I always have to watch the time here, watch how we're doing. And then for those of you just dropping in, we do something like this. You usually read a poem and then explore something via the poem. And then that's the inspiration part of it. And then we do meditation for 20 minutes. And then we come out and we have a conversation. So just to let you know a little bit, well, most of you really are in that rhythm now, especially if you've been coming every week for some of you for more than a year, that three-part rhythm is what we do: inspiration, meditation, conversation. Well, here's a poem. It's a new one this week. And it came out early in the week, which is good because I had to get ready for all this derby stuff. I had no idea. Most of the time at the last minute, the Holy Spirit gives me something worth saving. But this one actually showed up at the beginning of the week, which was nice. So this is called What to Remember. And that's really helpful because I think truth in advertising is something we should engage in at all times. And, we're called Homo sapien, wise men, women, wise people. We should really be called, some of you know this term, it's one of my favorites, Homo amnesian. We can forget anything. We can forget everything in a moment. All your core principles, all your vows, whatever. We can forget what life has any meaning at all. We have the ability to forget the most profound things like that. At least I do. Maybe I'm weird, but at least I do. But I think mostly you know what I'm talking about. So what to remember is a good thing. So it's a very short poem, but this will give us a little entryway into those other questions about, well, why we're here. Remember to love Holy Mystery with your whole heart and soul. Remember to love Holy Mystery with your whole heart and soul. And to love your neighbor and nature as your authentic self. For you are all, always, and already connected. Remember to love Holy Mystery with all your heart and soul, and to love your neighbor and nature as your authentic self. For you are all, always, and already connected. Remember to love Holy Mystery with all your heart and soul, and to love your neighbor and nature as your authentic self. For we are all, always, and already connected. That's the thing we forget. Some of us have never even remembered it. We may have known it in a previous life if we had one, but we forget that sense. Now, something right away, fundamentally, to answer the question of why we're all here is the sense of connection. You may be on page 2 or page 3 for me, but we're all here. We're all connected. And when you speak, you pop up really on my gallery. But we're all here, even if sometimes I can't see you. But this is really amazing. This would have, 50 years ago, this would be, if you just put somebody on this right now, 50 years ago, you know, they wouldn't believe what they're seeing. Some people from France, people from Washington, people from all the states in the union, they wouldn't believe it. It'd be like a miracle. Well, it is a miracle, but it works because we're always already connected. And that's the thing to remember. It's the last line. For we are all always and already connected. I think that's why we're here, because there was that sense of lack of connection. Somebody who is here today from Texas was in my first class almost 50 years ago, and there's another somebody here who was in my first class, a boys' school in Houston, Texas, who lives in New Mexico, and they're connected right now. But they've always been connected, these two guys, and so they're here. And I got an email from the Texas. Friend that said, now that COVID's over, and all the fear and the all the loss of stuff is starting to diminish. Why will you keep going? Good question. Sort of spurred me in this direction. It already fit in well. We're not here out of fear, really. The key word is there. Remember to love Holy Mystery with all your heart and soul. We were here for love, or I was here for love all the way. That's the only reason to come. And I think it's why people do come, because they feel connected to what Rumi called the unified theory in the 13th century. The unified field, this unified field of love pulls people in. No other reason. Not here because you got to, not here because if you miss, you'll go to hell. I mean, at first people apologized. They would send me an email and say, "I'm sorry I missed last Sunday, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Hey, it's all right. Things happen. It's not, you haven't sinned here." So remember to love Holy Mystery with all your heart and soul. I mean, I'm playing off of Jesus put it out there. They said, "What's the greatest commandment?" They were trying to trap him because whichever one he picked out of the 10. These are the Jewish kind of lawyers who were they were always trying to get him in a something where he would offend somebody. And he said, well, the greatest commandment is to love the Holy Mystery with your whole heart and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah, I added nature. And I think it was just so obvious for Jesus, because these people were all people. Jesus does not have one mechanical metaphor in the entire four Gospels, or even in the Thomas or the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. There's no mechanical metaphors, because he lived in the natural world. It was so much a part of him that he didn't even think to say, But I think we got to add it now, because the four things, I think the four things that, unless you're connected to these four things, you're longing for it. Or if you've forgotten that you're connected to these four things, there's great mystery. God doesn't work for some people. If it works for you, it's great, because it's a single syllable. It works great in poems sometimes, but or Allah or whatever, but Holy Mystery covers it all, because this is a transcendent mystery. So there's a feeling there's somehow, when you feel connected to all this mystery, it's a good feeling. And when you remember it, and also to your neighbor, and to nature, and to your authentic self. These are the four things that I think all humans desire to be connected to. These four things: the transcendent, the Holy Mystery, to your neighbor, to nature, and to your authentic self. Not to your role, not to your identity you press to everybody else, but just the essential self, who you really are underneath all this stuff, and who you really are as it sort of comes up in your life, as it really does come up over time. And a lot of times, because of illness, because of accidents, because of mistakes you've made. These are not, I think, at some point when at least Christianity got in bed with the empire, they created sin just so they have something to do. Hey, I forgive them. But I mean, these are things, sin really, the best is when you've forgotten that you're connected to these four things as a human being. When you forget it, or something gets in the way and you can't see your connection to the holy mystery or to each other or to even your authentic self. Certainly, nature is sort of lost in this era of life on screens, and so that's why I feel you got to put it in. I think if Jesus lived in the 21st century, he would have put that in too. Love the holy mystery with all your heart and soul, and then love your neighbor, nature, and your authentic self. Same way, to all your heart and soul. For you are always already connected. That's what to remember. And so spiritual practice, what the essence of it is first of all, it's about remembering. It's not about changing yourself in a way. Uh, that's why self-help is the opposite direction, because you've forgotten the main thing. Your authentic self already exists. You're already connected to all this stuff. But when you have a feeling of no connection, I was talking to somebody who I said, well, what's your biggest challenge lately? And they said, getting out of bed in the morning. I say, what's the point? You're in trouble. You've forgotten a lot when you're at that point. And when you get connected to these four things, the transcendent, other people, we hit, this as a spiritual practice, the heart to heart should probably be in the Hall of Fame, because we're hitting 750 here. We're hitting three of the four here. The nature thing is not the thing we've got. And I want to talk about that. But, we're hitting the three. We're hitting the transcendent when we meditate. That's the main thing. It's a special practice where you just want to spend some time with the divine. And so you leave all these other things on the surface. It's not that there's anything wrong with other people during that time. It's not. And actually, when you sit in this group, you feel that it's really a support that, there's people out there doing the same thing at the same time. But you're really leaving all of us. We're taking this special dive, the special plunge, just to be with the holy mystery, the divine, whatever words you want to use. The thing that is, as the 12 steps guys would say, they call it the higher self, but I think it's just got to be something bigger than my own ego. There better be. Otherwise, it's going to be really disappointing for me anyway. If there's not something bigger than my ego is pretty big. I share that with some of you. You do have to develop a sense of your personality. Some of the greatest, guys I admire, that I showed you my altar because I'm looking at those guys to remind me you can do this. They're all human beings and they all achieved something that was remarkable. The people, I'm looking at Merton and the Dalai Lama, my grandmother, Pema Chodron and, Jesus, etc. That's why icons are helpful. They're just practices of remembrance. That's what people have used beads for, to remember who you are. Okay. Who needs it? Well, you can answer that. Because if you don't have connection to these four things, you're gonna go looking for something and you're not gonna find it. Chances are. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. We all tried all of these things and then more. Whoever dies with the most stuff wins. Not really. Have you ever seen a U-Haul behind a hearse? I haven't. People just fight over this stuff. What's the point? But these four things, just to get it real clear, and so these are four areas that perhaps you already have a spiritual practice that you don't even know is a spiritual practice. So the essence of a spiritual practice is three things. It's intentional, and that can even be, look at the parentheses around it. It helps, if you're working in this area, you say, all right, I'm going to intend to drop down and spend some time with the divine here. I'm going to leave the surface behind for 20 minutes. That's fine. You intend to do it. And then the attention. If you're really going to love something, you have to pay attention to it. Simone Weil, who I mentioned before, the great French philosopher and contemplative, she said, attention is prayer. And then the third thing would be repetition. That really makes it's not just a one-off. And it's, every Sunday we show up here. Next Sunday I'll be in Atlanta for my new studio in Atlanta. I'll be staying with Elizabeth, but we'll still get together because you can do that. Love kicks the ass of time and space. So I can do this from Atlanta, and she's watching today, and she's going to make me a studio there. Believe me, it's not much. Yeah. So those three things: intention, attention, repetition. We get all kinds of habits of kind of stuff we do every day. I shave this side of my face every day. Why? Well, it's sort of a habit, but that's not necessarily a spiritual practice. It could be, though. It could be. See, so this is how you can make almost anything a spiritual practice with these three elements. And again, why would you even want to do it? Well, it's a form of connection to the divine. And that's, some people might have one level of connection. They might be batting 250. You might, if you're a scientific materialist or something, that you think, well, then the divine is offline. You don't even try to connect to it because there's nothing to connect to. Well, you're down to 750. And then if you don't much like people, there was one guy who said, well, my wife came back for a retreat and she loves everybody, but nobody in particular, especially not me, So, there's that sense of, if you love your neighbor, you love the people you're with, not just at the retreat, and then there's nature is like, it's 11, like 20 now. By 4 o'clock, this is what I've been doing lately. I'll take a tech app, a tech retreat, a tech Sabbath from 4 o'clock to Sunday to 4 o'clock Monday. I can do that because Monday's my day off. I shut the computer, no email, no text. I just don't answer them. And I spend most of the time outside. Pam came out last Monday, says, are you turning into a tree out here? And I said, yeah, I hope so. So that's something we really got to think about. How much time, the actual metrics on this are sort of alarming. The amount of time people spend just here, but not out there. And of course, nature is in here. Nature is right here. This is all nature, but if you're separated by a really cool place that you like inside, that's a little different. Nick is here today, visited me for the Derby and Mary Wright, and Nick's outside tuning in under the tree where I like to sit. So there's something about when you get out, go through the door and out into the big space, something really good happens. And so you got to think about taking a tech Sabbath. It doesn't have to be a whole 24 hours, but do you ever just turn the things off? And turn off the pinging. It's really hard not to answer when you hear the ping. And you can do that. And Monday's my day off because I work on the weekends like this, and this is my work. So turn that off. So think about what we're doing today. We're hitting 3 out of 4 here. We'll have time to be with the divine. We have time together, and we have time to, if you're pondering these questions, you're working on the authentic self level. How does this relate to me? Not the me on the surface, but the me on the depth. And this is a remarkable spiritual practice. I'm going to keep doing it just selfishly because I get a lot out of it, especially the dialogue, the contemplative dialogue, the contemplative conversation. Now, one last image here that really could shakes up you got to shake up your ideas of all of this stuff, which science is doing if you pay attention to it. We used to think the sun revolved around the earth. Well, surprise. Two words, two images, and to actually look at these two images, and then we'll plunge in. In our materialistic culture, and we have a materialistic culture mostly. We got churches on every street corner in Bardstown, but really our culture is materialist. Growth is the measure. the GDP, the GNP, all the growth. And that's it. And on a limited planet, if we're talking about material growth, we're running into that. That's a Titanic in the iceberg coming up because, more, more, more. And then if you're making more money, that's better. And even the human growth movement, human potential movement and growth movement, all the self-help, it's just, there's that. And then there's ripening. And I learned this from doing doing the Aramaic Jesus stuff years ago when I was actually just trying to translate the Aramaic into English. The Beatitudes, it was a revelation when I hit the 8 Beatitudes. It's been a year, half a year working on the 8 parts of the Lord's Prayer. When I hit the Beatitudes, it was like a big explosion. I'm glad I still had 10 years to teach at this point, because the word Jesus used, the 8 stages were stages of ripening. When, it's translated as blessed are, blessed are, blessed are, but the word in Aramaic is ripening. Ripening are this, and levels of ripeness to the last beatitude. You're totally ripe. You've achieved it. So again, organic image. Growth is kind of mechanical. And what is cancer? Growth, exponential growth of cells. And, you could say it's the same about the culture. More, more, more. We're not going up. If we're not creating more, there's something wrong with us. That's why the pandemic's a fooler, because we all did a lot less. But I know people wisely are saying, I'm not going back to the way I was living, because there's something else that happened in this time. There was a ripening. So keep your eye on that. And then ripening, any of you know, there's somebody here who actually raised peaches as a kid. You cannot rush the process. So that's when we over time, ripening happens organically, very slow. You cannot rush a peach tree to, come on, hurry up. You just can't do it. Well, you can't rush this, right? And what ripens is your authentic, essential self, plus all your connections. You really get to know the holy mystery. You got to spend time to get to know another human being. We've spent time together, some of us, and we got to know each other. And that's the beautiful part about the third part, where we have a contemplative conversation and I mute myself. You get to know these people in a way that is powerful, you see. So I think that's the fourth sort of teaser, is to move from a kind of image of growth. I have to always be growing, and that our country always has to be growing, to ripeness. And that is something else. There's nothing wrong with a green peach, but think about biting into one, and then think about biting into a absolutely ripe peach. You meet people, you meet human beings who are the same. So I had my last 10 years of teaching, I could look at my 35 kids, and rather than seeing good students and bad students, I saw students in all kinds of stages of ripeness. And that changed my view as a teacher, because then I said, well, all right, what are the causes? And if you got a green peach, you can put it, if it's picked green, which a lot of them are, you could put them in a bag. You can change this. You put them out in the sun. So think about that in terms of your own life, because if some parts of it you've forgotten entirely. Nature. Last week it was so powerful because people remembered stuff they used to do in nature when they remembered. See, so what to remember? Yeah, yeah. Well, let's practice with the one. Remember how to love the holy mystery with all your heart and soul. So we're shifting over to meditation mode now, just to give it 20 minutes. And we do this every time. That's the repetition part. Your intention is to drop off the surface of things and to go deep to whatever that mystery is that you're showing up for, to spend time there. And whenever you pop back up to the surface and are thinking about all this stuff that's not bad, but it's just not this, you just let yourself come down. Let yourself drop back down to whatever that is. And we're intending to do this for 20 minutes. So we're shifting to meditative mode now. And I'll just give you just a little intro to it. We'll start with the bells and some regular, some kind of quantum breathing helps where you breathe in deeply and fully and relaxed with through the nose and breathe out through the mouth. That somehow helps you make the descent from the surface to something deeper. So let's try that while we hear the bell. Just breathing. Inspiration and then expiration, but in through the nose, out through the mouth. It's a little practice in itself.